Hello, I'm Robert Kopper, and this is the Robert Kopper Show. Tonight, we're pleased to present three candidates for the Pembroke Selectman's office, an open seat. We're sponsored by NSK Information Technology Specialist, McHugh Well Drilling, and Bittersweet Design in Pembroke. In a minute, we'll do some self-introductions, but first I just want to go over the ground rules for the debate. We will be asking you questions that have been submitted by Pembroke residents, and you'll be given a minute and 30 seconds to answer those questions. And we want to try and keep to that tight deadline, so that out of respect for the other members and candidates. After these questions, we'll have a short lightning round of simple yes or no questions, and we'll just go in order as to my left. So first, we'll start with the self-introduction. So we go ahead, please.
My name's John Mattinson. I've been a resident in town for 48 years. Currently chairman of the Pembroke Cable Advisory Board. I'm married. My wife Kimberly and four boys. I'm pleased to be here.
Dan Taylor. I'm a resident of Pembroke on and off since 1968 when my family moved here. I moved back here in 2004 on Felicia Terrace right over near the hockey rink. I'm single. I work for a bank in the financial industry, and I'm happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Michelle Burt, and I want to say thank you for having me. I live in Pembroke with my husband Rich and our two children, Courtney and Kyle. I live in the house that I grew up in, which we bought from my parents. I have a long and proud history of community involvement in this town, and my network is a testament to that fact. I have both a legal and a business background. I believe I am well qualified for this position. After college, I worked as a paralegal in a law firm for several years and gained a tremendous amount of knowledge of how the legal system works. And I entered the business world as a realtor in 1994 when my husband and I started a family and never looked back. But my community involvement, my legal background, and my business background are not the only things that separate me from my opponents. I'm also an average citizen. I'm not a politician. I'm not affiliated with any groups, and I'm an independent. I come from a blue-collar union family. My father worked for the T, and my father was a longshoreman. I'm an independent, hardworking, self-employed businesswoman, and I feel as though I'm well qualified for this position and to make intelligent decisions that affect the entire community.
Thank you very much for those introductions, and we'll start right off with the questions. What is your vision for the community center, and how important is it to you that the town continue to own the building and make it available for use by all Pembroke residents? You start with that?
Start with me?
Yes.
Well, like pretty much everybody else in town here, I have an opinion on the community center. I actually worked in the building for 3.5 years, so I have a little bit of an insight on the building itself. You know, there's been a lot of studies done. There's been a lot of opinions, a lot of information. Hard to decipher all the information that there's been in it. If I had my grandiose wishes, we'd have a giant new community center in the center of town, owned and operated by the town of Pembroke, with a pool and a skating rink and a skateboard park. But the reality is, what can we afford to have in the center of town? And I think that that there's been a lot of study on whether to tear the building down, put up a new one. I haven't heard a lot about the renovation. I've just heard that it's not cost effective. I'm not convinced of that. I think that there's a solution out there where we can have a viable building in the center of town that we can afford to have in the center of town. I believe that there's opportunities to renovate that building. I think that the building can be done in phases, utilizing CPA money and state matching funds as well.
Very good. And you, sir?
It's funny, I've been to a couple of the meetings, and I've read the study that they did previously about, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, and then the study that they just presented the other night. And I guess I would have to say that at this point I would support anything that makes financial sense for the town. you know, I've looked at the three options, you know, which is the renovation, the tear down, and I forget what the third one was. But I think, you know, at first I was very sentimental about it. I went to first grade in that school and second grade, and I was thinking, you know, oh, I'd like to save the facade or somehow tie that into the community. And then at the meeting, listening to how, you know, there are issues with, you know, brick walls that are crumbling down on the older section. It's becoming apparent to me that, you know, we're either gonna have to, I think we're gonna probably have to tear it down, is what I'm thinking. Not that I'd like to see that happen. I'd really like to save the front of the building so that it looks the same. You know, I think going forward, I think we need to figure out a way to financially afford it. You know, the building's been sitting there for years and years and years. We haven't been able to afford to maintain it, so I think going forward, we have to figure out a way to maintain it.
And Michelle?
It breaks my heart to see that building come down. Growing up here, it was a school, but the building committee has done a lot of research on it, and it's not gonna be cost effective to renovate it. And it's taxpayers' money, so you have to think about what's best for the overall good of the town. So if tearing it down and starting it over is more cost effective than renovating it, then I would say that we need to go with that option. I'm not in favor of a YMCA in the center of town. The traffic is already horrific. I like the YMCA. I think a YMCA in Pembroke would be great, but on another piece of property, not necessarily in the center of town. There is a need for a community center. A lot of people do use that building. If we can well afford it and make the numbers work, I would like to see a building in the center of town. Of great concern is Pembroke Youth Hockey in that bingo program. I want to make sure that they're not displaced during what could be a 2-year construction phase. We have one of the cheapest hockey programs around, and we have almost 400 kids in the Pembroke Youth Hockey program. So we need to make sure that we have a program set up for them during the construction if we do a new building there, so that they are not displaced and those families can still afford to have their kids play hockey, in part by the bingo program.
Very good, thank you. If elected selectmen, in what areas would you make changes? Start on this side again?
Start with me again?
John, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's been an issue in the town hall with communication, for one thing. I know that there was a study done last summer by there was an intern from Suffolk University, and they one of the areas that they came up with is critical in the town was communications and lack of communication between departments and with the public. I'd like to see that improved. I think there's a number of ways that can be done through social media, through utilizing and identifying a go-to place such as like a WATD radio, the internet. We've improved a lot with this, with the email blasts that we've been using, but there's room for other things. That I'd like to see. I'd like to see some work done on that.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the community center, which we just touched base on, is going to be one of the biggest items going forward in the next 2 to 3 years. What we do with that, how we finance that.
Mm-hmm. Dan, what are your thoughts on that?
Many thoughts. I mean, it's kind of a broad question. I mean, I think there are, you know, financial issues that we have to look at right off the bat. You know, we have 5 schools that need in partial roofs or in some cases full roofs. You know, all the schools have been updated. However, you know, a lot of them were renovated as opposed to, you know, completely new construction. So, you know, those roofs are failing. We've got, you know, tarps on library books, and you know, I think we have to focus on looking at where we're going to be spending money going forward.
So that would be the main issue with you spending money.
Right.
Now it's done. Michelle, what are your thoughts on it?
I'm very excited about being on the Board of Selectmen. One of my ideas that I have would be, I think it would be fruitful for us to have a town planner, even if it was perhaps on a part-time basis, or maybe even someone that just wrote grants so that we could plan ahead and, try and capture some money that's out there. Currently, each department writes their own grants, and I think that a grant writer would be beneficial to the town. I have a lot of great ideas, and one of the ideas that I have is there's a small group out there called the Friends of the Pembroke Skate Park, and you probably never heard of them, but they've saved $65,000 to do a skate park in the town of Pembroke, and they can't get anywhere. So I've been talking to them, Katie Donato is her name, and I've talked to her several times. And one of my ideas is that what if we could find a place in Pembroke, not necessarily the center of town, but a piece of land, and I'll use this as an example because it's too small and it would never work, but the Lydia Drake Library. What if we could find a piece of land, larger of course, like the Lydia Drake Library, and marry the two of them together and do a project? For example, the landfill, there's federal money, it's called brownfielding, to create a park on a landfill that was capped. How nice would it be to have a park where the landfill is now? It's a beautiful piece of property, and it's only used one day a week.
Okay, thank you. There have been complaints about the way some of the current selectmen respond to residents' concerns. Apparently, one resident was told to shut up. Another selectman said that he didn't care what the people wanted. What are your thoughts on that kind of response to Pembroke residents?
You start with me?
Well, I'll start with Michelle this time.
Okay. So, it's completely unacceptable for a selectman or any elected official to speak to a Pembroke resident in that manner. You should always let them talk and voice their opinion, and that's why we're here. We work for the voters. So I wasn't present when this happened or allegedly happened, but I would hope that the selectmen apologized to this particular person. But unfortunately, not everyone always plays well in the sandbox, and that happens at a local level, it happens at a state level, and it happens in corporate America. There are always people that throw sand. I would think that the two people resolved their issue and have moved on. I didn't see what happened or what the context of the situation was. And I'm sorry to hear that it happened if it did.
Mm-hmm. Dan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think, and I think I agree with a lot of what Michelle said. I think, I think while we work for the voters, we also work for all of the town residents, not just the people who vote. I think that, I think one of the things is recently being on the planning board as the chairman, we've been dealing with this medicinal marijuana bylaw. And it's one of those things where there are very strong feelings on both sides, and understandably, and I think one of the things that I would hope to bring to the table would be to kind of reduce the rhetoric and the yelling and the screaming and get people to talk and figure out a way to do things so that if maybe not everyone's completely happy, that it's acceptable to both parties.
Mm-hmm. And John, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously I agree with both Michelle and Dan. I don't think there's any room for not only elected officials talking to the public, but I mean, that's not the way you resolve anything anyway. And intelligent conversation and making sense goes a lot further than that. I think that some of it does come from frustration, and I come back to communication and lack of communication. Factually, it's very difficult to sort through what's fact and what's not fact. Referring back to the community center, bricks falling down. I mean, we've been told in the last year and a half that the building was going to be shut down by the Board of Health because of mold. The state inspector comes in and looks and says there's not a mold problem here. We're told that the place is going to be condemned because the sill is rotted. There's 220 feet of sill. There was a 10-foot section that was rotted because a pipe leaked on it. That can be fixed by a handyman going to Lowe's. The bricks falling off the building. I mean, I'm not an expert, but I haven't seen any bricks falling down on people over there. How much of this is people trying to put a spin to get what they want out of this? to get their own agenda across, and how much of it is factual, and it leads to frustration, which leads to people yelling at each other. Having the selectmen say that they don't care what town meeting says, they're not gonna change the way that they think, the way they do, there's a problem there. If you're not willing to listen to what the people and consider that possibly, your opinion isn't correct, there's a problem.
Okay, thank you. Extensive outages and damage occurred during the February 8th Nemo storm. What would you do to assure that Pembroke is more prepared for emergencies and disasters? We'll start with you, John.
I'm gonna change my seat, keep starting with me.
I'll change with you.
Okay, we'll start with Michelle.
That's fine, that's fine.
I want it to be closer to the camera.
Let me say, I've actually done some research on that. I listened to the debriefing of by the department heads. I also heard some concerns that were out there of things that went wrong. Any emergency situation it's tough, and people are dealing, sometimes you don't know what's coming at you. But I think that the town really needs a solid plan, an emergency management plan. And I'd also like to see, from my recent research, that there's an outfit called the Mass State Citizens Court Council, and they help cities and towns create what they call a community emergency response team. There's several of our surrounding communities, like Hanover, Halifax, Rockland, Clinton, Bridgewater, East Bridgewater, Whitman, Middleborough, Plymouth, all have these. They help in training. They also help with grant opportunities. I didn't realize there's a grant out there for an emergency management vehicle through the Homeland Security. One of the concerns that in the debriefing was that cruises were being used to go get people from the housing and the assisted living areas in town. How nice would it be to have an emergency vehicle, available just for the town? So I think through training, emergency planning, and grant opportunities through MEMA, FEMA, and Homeland Security, we should take advantage of these and come up with a comprehensive plan for emergency management.
Okay. Dan?
I think, there obviously, it's obvious there needs to be an emergency management plan in place. I don't think anyone can say that, this storm was expected. I think the results were horrific. I mean, there were people without power for 5 days. There were people over in Marshfield and other areas that were out even longer. I do know there were a lot of, not only fire people out there that I've talked to who were out, checking on seniors. There were volunteers out. I know that, Josh Cutler, our state rep, was driving a Gatra bus, getting people out of these, places and trying to get them to the warming shelters. I think we all had hoped that, the lights would be coming on at any second. And it just, I put a lot of the blame for this, what I call the slow response on, I think the management of National Grid was horrific. I think the guys working in the bucket trucks did a great job, but I think they were frequently yanked off one area to go work on another area. There didn't seem to be any combined plan on, you had guys showing up to cut trees, waiting for other guys to come up and shut off the power, and then the opposite, and there just seemed to be no coordination between the two. I think it could have been cleaned up a lot faster.
Michelle, what are your thoughts on this?
I want to start off by saying that I commend both the fire department and the police department for an excellent job during the storm. I had a transformer fire on my street, so I saw firsthand the response time, and I think they did a fabulous job. I think something that I would like to do better or change is try and work at a state, or actually with the federal level with NEMA, on a way to get COTS faster or more efficiently into that council on aging. We had an issue where the response time was slow and we didn't get the COTS in time, and we had people that were in need of COTS. So perhaps we could store them in Pembroke ourselves, or find a situation or a solution to the problem where we could have the COTS stored locally. And I just wanted to speak to John's earlier point about the community center and repairing it. I believe one of the issues with repairing of the community center is that if you do make a repair to the center, an extensive repair, you need to bring it up to current standards. So, it's not just a matter of repairing the sill. You need to bring it up to current zoning,
Code.
current code.
Yeah.
Code is the word I was looking for, thank you. You would need to bring it up to the current, my husband's an electrician too, he won't be happy that I forgot that word. Current code. So I think that's one of the issues with that building is I don't think we can put Band-Aids on it anymore.
Many busy streets, notably Oak Street, have no sidewalks and are dangerous for children and other pedestrians. Will you address this problem or try to address this problem if elected selectman? Michelle?
I would love to see a sidewalk. Right now, the sidewalk comes out of the center of town and it comes up and it stops at Four Winds. And I would love to see that sidewalk go all the way down to the high school. The foot traffic there is horrendous. And especially if we have a park at the landfill, there would be more kids traveling. Kids travel that strip anyhow. They're going to hockey practice, they're going to the school. And when I was in high school, I had a friend that was on a motorcycle and was in an accident there and lost his leg. It's a very dangerous spot. I agree Oak Street is busy, but I think there's a greater need for a sidewalk on that strip where the kids are over by the high school, from Learning Lane all the way up past the rink to Four Winds Drive.
Very good. Dan?
I guess I have mixed feelings on sidewalks. Growing up here, I like, I'm sentimental about the way Pembroke has been. I don't want to see it turned into like Quincy or Weymouth with, sidewalks everywhere and crosswalks. And, I'm not even crazy about having as many traffic lights as we do. I mean, I realize we need them. I think Michelle's point about I think if we decide to do sidewalks, if it's cost effective, I think they should be in areas that are close to schools, Oak Street, Hopmock Street. The area you mentioned is a perfect example.
While we're with you, Dan, we'll go to the next question. It's been 9 months since Pembroke lost its TV station. At a recent town meeting, we voted to get rid of PAC TV. If elected selectman, would you do that? Would you try and get PAC TV back? What are your thoughts?
I'd have to look into it more. I'm vaguely familiar with the situation, but I don't know the details on both sides, so I'd have to look into it more.
Okay. And John?
Can I answer the sidewalk question too?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Because I actually think that you're both, I see merit, and I think you're both right. I as well grew up in Pembroke and not looking to see a city-type landscape here, but I also do think that sidewalks are necessary around the schools. My kids have gone to Bryantville Elementary. If I don't pay to have them ride the bus, they have to walk. The state would take my children away from me if I made them walk from my house to that school on those roads without sidewalks and the traffic that's there. On the flip side of that is I was at a meeting in Duxbury a couple of years ago and they were talking about sidewalks and they said that it cost $1 million a mile for a sidewalk. I was stunned. I don't know how they come up with that figure, but if that's the case, I think we need to be prudent in where we put the sidewalks. Not that there's not a need for some in and around here. I'm sorry, to come back to the question on PAC, you're probably asking someone that can't do this in a minute and a half, but I will say that I do have a lot of insight in that whole situation.
You have a background with PAC?
I have a background with PMB that was sold to PAC for $1. I believe that the transaction was illegal. I believed it at the time. I think that the transaction was proven and verified by Kopper and Page that the contract between PMB and PAC was not legal. So the town went and hastily, in a so-called Thursday night meeting that was supposed to be posted. I still haven't seen the posting of the minutes hammered out a contract with PAC to give almost $250,000 worth of equipment that belonged to the town of Pembroke and $309,000 of cash to PAC to run an entity that we were running in town with a full-time and a part-time employee, a studio and facilities right in the center of town for $109,000. But the same thing, we gave PAC surplus equipment, which I don't believe if I want to buy a cruiser off the town for $1, I don't believe I'm allowed to do that. I think that equipment should have gone to surplus auction. I believe that the cash, we have no business sign. If the town felt in its wisdom that PAC could do a better job than PMB was doing of running the cable facility, that's fine. But how about at a cost that makes sense to the town of Pembroke? There was no need to give them $309,000 in cash plus a contract paying them $226,000 the first year and $186,000 plus for the next 6 years for something we were doing for $109,000. That money should have stayed in Pembroke for use within Pembroke.
Dan, what are your thoughts on this?
I think I already answered that, didn't
Yes, sir.
How do you feel about it? Did you
I?
answer?
Oh, I already answered the
Oh,
question.
okay, I'm sorry. Michelle, did you answer that?
I did not,
Okay.
but I'll be happy to.
Please.
I'm not as educated on the issue as John is, but I can say that the people that I have spoken with are happy with PAC TV, and especially the program that's in the high school. Apparently it's well received, and I have no negative comments about either situation, and I only hear positive things.
Very good. Michelle, how long have you lived in Pembroke? Did you mention in your introduction?
Can I count the time I was in the womb? I've lived here all my life, born and raised here, so I'm gonna be 46 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Birthday.
Yep, thank you. My kids are fourth generation residents.
And Dan, I think you mentioned, but just tell us again, you've been here quite a while.
Right,
Yeah.
my family moved here in 1968. It was, I remember my parents were being very proud. They bought a brand-new house on Fairwood Drive, and it was very exciting for them. I remember them picking out, appliances and like that. And I think so I've been here a long time. Did move away when I was older a little bit,
Yeah.
moved back.
Well, it's good that you have roots in the town. I think that's very important. And, John, you had mentioned how long you've been here?
I've lived in Pembroke for 48 years, and for the 10, 11 years before that, I've got cross family from town. My mother, previously, before I was born, had built a house in Little Sandy Pond. My uncle was a police officer in town for 20-something years. So deep roots in the town.
I feel like a newcomer. We moved here in '85, so
Welcome.
thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the lightning round, and this is just basically a yes or no answer. And we'll start with Dan.
Okay.
Should part-time elected officials get health care benefits?
No.
Michelle?
Part-time, no.
John?
No, but I think that we'd have to be considerate and maybe grandfather.
Okay, that is a yes or no.
There would be a,
Thank you.
there'd be a no.
Do you consider the old high school that is now the community center a historic building? Dan?
Somewhat.
Somewhat.
No, yes
Michelle?
or no?
Yes.
John?
Yes. Yes, I do.
I would agree with that. During Storm Nemo, Marshfield called in the National Guard for elderly care residents. Pembroke did not. Would you call the National Guard in to help during an emergency?
Yes.
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 Easy question. And last, there's a group of contractors advising the community center be torn down. Do you think that's a wise thing to do? I think we've talked about the community center, but just in general,
I don't believe it is.
you don't think it's a good thing to tear it down and start over?
I don't.
And Dan, how do you feel?
I'd have to say that, wait to see the final presentation.
Michelle?
I would say based on the building committee and their report, they're saying it's not cost effective to renovate the building.
Okay, very good.
Could I also respond to something that Michelle had said about
Sure.
coming to code? I'm not a contractor, but I was led to believe that if the building is renovated in phases, that we're grandfathered under the old codes.
Yeah, that could be. I have thoughts about this as well, and I work in Boston. I work for a property management company, And many buildings in Boston, they've taken old historic facades and gutted them and then built a building inside them and up above them. And to my way of thinking, from what I've heard, the brickwork is actually in good shape. The building is solid. It was built in the 30s. They build buildings solid that way. And
I think the front is,
yeah,
the back and the sides, I don't think so much.
yeah. Perhaps this would be a good time to just do a final summation of your thoughts and why you think you'd be a great candidate for selectman of the town of Pembroke. Let's start with Dan, because you've been.
Sure. I guess the reason I want to run for selectman, I think I'm the best candidate, is my financial background. I've been in banking since 1989. I care a lot about this community. I grew up here, as did both of my opponents, and I want to make sure that we can keep Pembroke affordable for the people who want to live here, especially seniors. I know it's a balancing act trying to, preserve our critical services, give our schools the updates that they need, but not pricing people out of the community. If I'm elected, I ask for everyone's vote on April 27th. I promise that I'll hit the ground running. I think in my years on the planning board, I think that I can bridge the gaps between the different departments.
Michelle?
I think I'm the best candidate for selectman. I'm not a politician. I did serve a term on the Housing Authority. I am involved in the community. I have a legal or business background, and I'm not affiliated with any political party, and I feel as though I am the candidate that represents the entire community. I'm a hardworking businesswoman, and I'm perfectly capable of making intelligent, common sense decisions that involve the entire community, and that's why I feel as though I'm the best candidate.
John?
Well, I as well, I'm an independent, and I'm not a politician. I'm a resident in town who cares about the town. To show you how much of not a politician I am, I would say that Pembroke's lucky, because I think that you can't go wrong with any one of these candidates. And if I wasn't running, I wouldn't hesitate to vote for either one of these people as well. But you do have to make a choice, and I would say, unfortunately, there's only one seat available this year. I wish there were three. And I believe it's time for a change. I have business management experience. I've been involved in the town for a number of years. I've been to, I think Ed Thorne and Arthur Boyle are the only two in town that have been to most selectmen's meetings in the last 10 years, and myself, seeing that I covered them every Monday night. And I believe that the residents of town are looking for a change. They're tired of the same old. They're tired of backroom deals or the perception, whether it's true or not, the perception of that. And I think that the town is fortunate that there is going to be a breath of fresh air no matter which one of us gets in April. And also, let me just throw out there that since your birthday's tomorrow, my birthday's on election day, so give me a birthday present and vote for me.
Good. If we have any more time, I wonder if there's any issue that really stands out. I know we've talked about the community center, but is there any other issue you'd like to address just briefly? Michelle?
No, I think probably the medical marijuana issue is top of the list for most of the residents, and it's a difficult issue. The people voted in favor of medical marijuana, and although me personally, as a citizen, I'm not in favor of medical marijuana, as a selectman, you have to represent the will of the people. So I think that the best thing we can do at this time is bring the bylaw to town meeting and let the people vote on it.
I know that you can go to the facts and figures about the election and find out how the town voted, and I haven't heard.
63%.
63% said yes? Okay.
So the people of the town voted in favor of it. I mean, that's not to say that some voted for medical marijuana because they have a sick aunt with cancer would also want a distribution center in her town.
Yeah.
She may have voted for medical marijuana because she was in favor of it, but she may not be in favor of it in her own town.
Dan, do you have any pressing issue that you'd really like to
I could
address right in, as you
I've been in
stated?
the hot seat on medical marijuana for like the last 3 weeks, so I think I could talk about it until you beg me to stop. It's a really complicated issue. I've heard from residents on both sides of the situation, and I understand completely how people feel.
Mhm.
There are some people who absolutely do not want it here. There are other people here who, may be terminally ill, know people who are terminally ill, and there was language in the bylaw that they felt was prejudicial against people who might actually need to use this product for medicinal purposes. I think the planning board has been trying to work with the Board of Selectmen. It's not easy because I think there's, even on the planning board, there are people who are dead set against it.
Yeah.
And really, we're kind of, I hate to say this, I don't want to offend anybody on either board, but we're really, this bylaw from the selectmen is kind of a knee-jerk reaction. We don't even have the regulations yet, so we're kind of like punching at air, trying to protect the community, and we have no idea what it's gonna look like.
John, how about you? Do you have any pressing issues you're gonna start out with?
Well, I'm gonna talk about the marijuana issue too, and I think you're right, Dan, I think that it was a knee-jerk reaction. I appreciate that they were looking to protect the town in their estimation, but I also think that they lost sight of the fact that 63% of people did vote for it. And I find it interesting, yesterday or the day before yesterday, the State Attorney General came out and said that cities and towns will not be allowed to ban these facilities, so you're gonna have to try and find a way to live with them. I think that people have some kind of a misconception about these places too. I'm not an expert in it, I've just done a little bit of reading recently on them, but these aren't push cart operations that are gonna be selling nickel bags in the playgrounds. They're multi-million-dollar facilities. And to have someone pick up their prescription at the Dana-Farber Institute and drive down to Pembroke and have to go find the place tucked in, hidden behind the Christmas tree shop in the adult entertainment district is a little bit limiting. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong within a business or an industrial zoned area. I believe that was discussed in your meeting the other night. And I thought that made a lot of sense. I mean, if it was in a strip, I wouldn't have a problem with it if it was in Pembroke Center near the police station in between CVS Pharmacy and, I mean, we got 28 liquor licenses in this town. We got 8 liquor stores. A multi-million-dollar medical marijuana facility, I don't think is out of line. Not that they necessarily want to come to Pembroke anyway, but.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm very encouraged by this slate of candidates we have here. I'm very impressed, and it's, as you say, it's too bad there are not 3 seats open. But the voters will decide, and may the best person win. It's been very enjoyable. It's great to meet you all and hear what you have to say. And this is Robert Kopper, and that concludes our interview. I hope it's helped you. Thank you.